volume, or do I do?
You don't need that.
Thanks, Will. So we had our first candidate forum last night. The college Democrats convened at the University of Kentucky. I know Ken, where'd Ken go? There he is, sorry, I said, where'd he go? Ken and Will were there. The one feedback I got from people was like, you speak very loudly into your microphone. And I was like, well, that's what years and years of theater and choir do, right? You learn to project. So I need to make sure that I control the volume of my voice. But no, yeah, I'm Erin Petrey, as Craig said. Thank you all for letting me come here and address you all tonight. I have been beside you out in the streets protesting, holding up abolish ICE signs, freezing my butt off out there alongside you. And you know, I think I got the greatest photo I think that's ever been taken of me outside of the Fox 56, holding the big pride flag. That's it's still, one of my friends uses it as a sticker in text to respond to me to things. But I'll give you kind of my short candidate spiel because I think most of you are familiar with kind of who I am and what I stand for. But she's like, nope. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm doing more of this. So my name is Erin Petrey. I was born here in Lexington. I grew up on a farm in Lawrenceburg. I'm a graduate of Fayette County Public Schools. And growing up, I always wanted to be a diplomat. I wanted to go around the world and tell people how amazing America is, how democracy works, what great things we stand for. And that's why I went and I did my undergrad at the George Washington University in DC in International Affairs and Anthropology, and then I came back here to Lexington to do my master's at the Patterson School of Diplomacy, because I wanted to be that Foreign Service officer. But America started breaking promises to me around then. And in December of 2009, it was the height of the Great Recession. Jobs, especially in the Foreign Service, were not there. So I came back to Kentucky, or I was in Kentucky looking for jobs in the Foreign Service, and I realized there really just wasn't anything there for me. So I took that opportunity to do something a little bold, and I moved to South Korea, and I taught English in a public school in southeastern Korea, in Daegu, in a low socioeconomic elementary school. And that was a job. That was a job, especially when you can't understand anything they're saying. But that was really, truly amazing. And that was, you know, I'd already traveled, you know, around the world before, but being able to see how other people in another country are like, wow, what's it like in America? You know, it really, it hits hard. It makes you feel like, wow, we are very important. And then when I came back, I once again was looking for jobs in international affairs here in Kentucky, and not really there either. So I decided to move back to DC and see, you know, what was there. And I was thrilled to be able to get a job as a special assistant to the ambassador of Libya to the United States. This was right after the revolution, right after they overthrew Gaddafi. Gaddafi had held that country since 1969. Before that, it was a monarchy. No one had voted there before. My job was to reestablish relationships between the post-revolutionary government and the United States and help their government do that here. I was the frontline person to speak to Department of State, Department of Defense, the White House, Congress, and all other departments, Department of Justice, Energy, you name it. My third day was Benghazi, the attack on the consulate in Benghazi, so I definitely have dealt with international incidents directly. But probably the most important thing I learned from that job is how fragile, but how sweet and amazing democracy can be. I saw people vote for the first time in generations of their family, if ever. People were like, I just voted. And they were so excited. I remember one day I went in with a jury duty summons. And I was like, ugh, guys, I need a day off in like a month. And they were like, I was expecting them to say, that sucks, right? That's what everybody says when you get jury duty. But no, they said, that's so cool. They didn't have anything like that in Libya. And those two experiences made me realize how special America and what we have here. And so in November of 2024, I had a decision to make, right? Because I think everybody in this room knew how bad Donald Trump was the first time. I think that we're all kind of on that page. And I lost my job in 2017 because of Donald Trump. I was working in export finance and exporting goods and services overseas for small businesses, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. And then Donald Trump said, oh, we can't help small businesses like that. We can't do that. So I lost my job in 2017, first Trump administration. So I'd known how bad it was, and I saw everything. I marched at the first Women's March. I protested outside the White House when he did the first travel bans. I mean, I've been working against this guy for a long time. And then November, right? And I said, I can either keep complaining and rage posting to social media, or I can do something about it. And I'm never one to not just grab something and take it. So I did something about it, and that's why I'm here today. Because one of the things that we all, especially as, I'm running as a Democrat. One of the things that we know the Democratic Party has not done well on doing is we were not the party we needed to be at the time we needed to be it. The Democratic Party has become complacent in what they're doing, and they're still doing a lot of that. And another reason I wanted to run is to revitalize and reinvigorate the Democratic Party, and not just what we stand for, but how we act. Because we need new leaders, new voices, and new direction. And we need to focus on things that are not just new and fresh, but also relevant. I'm a millennial, right? I feel like every single time I'm living through some new unprecedented time. And the future generations need more stability. We need to reshape how this country is built from the foundations, because Donald Trump spent 4 years looking for every single fissure and crack possible. And it is our job to make sure that never happens again. But everyone is still struggling, right? That's the big goal, right? Rebuild this party. But at the end of the day, folks are still struggling out there. And that's why my campaign is focused on 3 main things. It's affordability, access, and opportunity. Because things are too expensive, we know that. Housing to healthcare to groceries to basic goods and services. So that's why I believe in a living wage, raising the minimum wage, reinstating prevailing wage, especially for union workers who are working on federal projects or government projects. Universal healthcare, Medicare for all. We're the richest country in the world, and we can't, and over 500,000 people every year go into bankruptcy because of medical care. I have Crohn's disease. I know it can be very expensive just to stay alive. And I also believe, though, in access, because just because things are affordable doesn't mean you can get them. Which means I believe in access to healthcare, to housing, regardless of who you love, your gender identity, the color of your skin, your religion, what your socioeconomic status is, what state you come from. If you're rural, suburban, urban, we need to make sure that access is there. But I don't like to just talk about things are bad and what we need to fix that's bad, because I also love to talk about opportunity. Because this time is an incredible opportunity. And I have so much hope because people mad, people big mad, and we can use that energy for good. We can rebuild this place to be what we all know it can be. I've done a lot of work in investment and jobs and renewable energy. I know how to build big things and make them last. And that's what I want to do for Kentucky, especially in this seat. And I really, at the end of the day, I want to make the American dream the American reality again, because we've been sold this. But between billionaires getting tax cuts while everyone else struggles, that can't keep happening. I believe in instituting a wealth tax. I believe in fully reforming our tax code. I believe in incentivizing quality investment, especially in things like affordable housing, incentivizing zoning and permitting for affordable housing. And I also believe in overturning Citizens United and getting corporate money out of politics, which is why I am the only candidate in this race who has publicly declared not a commitment to never take corporate PAC money. And I've been yelled at by some people who are like, but I want to give it to you. And I'm like, but I can't take that. I was like, I understand. There have been big checks waved at me before. I was offered a job, actually. And I just want to talk about immigration for 1 second, because I know you said the cards, and I deeply appreciate this too. I was at Woodford County last week, and I was like, they were talking about ICE and immigration. They wanted me to come there to talk about that. And I said, y'all, please don't post on Facebook. Please don't do this. Like, do the right things. You know, it's the spread power, not panic, which I love. But when it comes to immigration, we have to start from the bottom. We can't reform this system. It doesn't work. We have to abolish ICE. We have to not just do that. I've also called for a 365-day pause on routine enforcement, because what the force that is out there right now is uncontrolled. They are masked, armed goon squads in our streets. That is not safe for our communities. And we need to investigate and prosecute every single person who has been complicit in the overreach of power and the murders of Alex Petrey, Renee Nicole Good, and all of the countless others. And I was off, and the thing is, I've been, it's like, I say this, it's like, I've been against ICE since before it was cool. Back a couple of years ago, I was offered a job. It's called a Schedule A job, which means essentially it's an appointment at USCIS, which is like the visa issuing service under the Department of Homeland Security. If you don't know, Department of Homeland Security, our immigration system used to all be under the INS, the Immigration Naturalization Service. Now
Erin.
it got kind of pulled. Yeah.
I'm gonna step in here
Yeah.
because we're gonna get off time if we don't get
Oh,
all the
you're fine.
questions. But,
Oh no, that was my last piece.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can
No,
finish
you're
that,
fine.
yeah. Hey, I will tell you too, if you go to her website,
Yeah.
she's got a lot of her policy statements
Yes.
on her website, and you've got a Substack too, right?
I do have a Substack, yes.
She's
Yeah.
got a lot of
No,
information.
that was the last thing.
Okay.
This is literally the last thing, and then I was gonna open it
Okay,
up.
and then we'll get on to questions.
I was offered that job, right? And USCIS, ICE, and CBP, Border Control, all work together. I was offered that job. It was a big cushy job. Could have gone anywhere in the federal government in 2 years. Next day I was like, I can't do this. I can't work with the organization that makes ICE possible. It makes Department of Homeland Security possible. So when people say, oh, you say that you won't take corporate money? What about being, you know, compromised in the future? I've had that choice before, and I've turned it down. And I will continue to do that. So my name's Erin Petrey. I'm running for the Democratic nomination for the 6th Congressional District, my home, where I grew up, the place that made me who I am, and I would love to hear your questions. Also, I'm very long-winded sometimes.
So if you have a question, raise your hand and Ken will bring you the mic so we can all hear what you're saying.
You can talk real quiet.
I can't.
I know.
Gets me in trouble.
With the changes that were made regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion recently, are there any plans in your, you know, in your vision to address that and improve that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this whole battle on DEI is absurd. We know that. And I said in the forum last night, DEI doesn't just it doesn't give people a head start. It levels the playing field, right? It helps people in rural Kentucky go to Ivy League schools. People who didn't go to some fancy high school, who didn't have rich parents or legacy parents, access quality education. I mean, my plans are essentially to pull it back, to bring it all back. First off, we have to divorce any notion of university funding, especially medical research funding, with any sort of DEI pieces. So the number one thing is to completely strike that particular clause from any sort of government grant, government contract that says you won't get this contract if you do the DEI, right? So that's first and foremost. But then it's also, I feel like we need to have stronger conversations about what we're doing, right? Because I know that, affirmative action was the quota system, that doesn't really work. But it was a step, right? And we figured out the problems with that system. We've now seen these issues. Remember back when BLM, when Black Lives Matter was big and all these companies said, oh, we're gonna give billions. You know where that money went? Nowhere. They did nothing. So, if we wanna do something about it, we should be incentivizing it again. And there were so many things in the government before that incentivized women-owned businesses. But those women-owned businesses also incentivized veteran-owned businesses. And the minority-owned businesses also incentivize indigenous-owned businesses. And maybe we need to add a clause in there just to, you know, if we wanna really pull in some of the GOP, and also our own people and raise our own people up, maybe it's rural-owned businesses too. And say, listen, this is for everyone who has been historically pushed out. So it's really just, it's ripping, it's honestly, it's erasing what they've done. Thank you.
Hey, I'm a teacher too, so I can project, unless you just really want to give me the mic. So I looked at your website today on my lunch break, and I'm very impressed with the specificity of policies in your platform. So if you guys haven't checked it out, like every issue really does have like tangible, I know how Congress works and these are the things, you know, evidence on there. So props on that. So my question's gonna be kind of boring, but if you had your wish list of House committees, right?
Oh, yeah.
What House committee or committees do you really feel drawn to and why?
Yeah, number one, appropriations, obviously, because control the money, right? So when I talk about, and that's not a bad, that's a great question. It's not a boring question. It's a very important one. It's one I've asked a lot.
And
So
probably B level, not to be really specific, but like appropriations is a big deal.
yeah, no, I know.
Okay.
No, I know. Listen, but that's the reach.
Yeah, you're right. I said dream. I said dream. Okay, perfect.
This is the dream, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I mean, look in politics, right? Where are the problems? You follow the money, right? So appropriations is a big one. Foreign affairs. I have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree in that topic. I've been to over 41 countries. I speak 3 languages. I've lived in 3 countries. I understand foreign relations very well. I also understand foreign trade very well. And I wrote an article actually on my Substack about America's cultural crisis. Because we have devalued what it means to be an American, and that is the most dangerous thing that is happening. We have eroded soft power completely, and that is something that takes so long to build. You can bomb a building, whatever. You turn an entire world against you, it's gonna take a long time to rebuild. Look at Germany. There's a reason that things were so draconian afterwards. But what's the first thing you think of when you think of Germany? Let's be honest. We don't want to be that country in 75 years. And then the third one would be energy and natural resources. And energy and natural resources, so I spent a lot of my career in the renewable energy space. Energy is one of the things that I'm honestly really mad that more politicians aren't talking about this, and I frankly think that people in this race don't want to talk about it because they're scared of coal. But I instead wrote a long, well-researched article about it, why coal in Kentucky is not happening. And it has nothing to do with being woke, it has nothing to do with renewable energy, it has to do with the economic realities of coal in Kentucky. We cannot compete domestically with Alabama, Montana, Wyoming, Virginia, West Virginia, full stop. That's just it. It's an economic issue. But we need to move towards significant permitting reform, expanding transmission and distribution lines and upgrading those. We also need to move towards putting things like, and this is one of the things I think that would work well with the technology committee, is putting efficiency standard requirements on data centers for water usage, energy usage, as well as rare earth mineral utilization. So those are the kind of things that those are the reasons, and that is why. Good question. Yes.
I don't think I'll need the mic.
Okay.
Big capital / private equity is buying up a significant fraction of the single-family houses that have been built. I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's somewhere around half, maybe 40%. How do we address that so that those houses are available for individuals and families to buy? The median age of first home ownership has been going up for decades.
40 right now, yeah.
How can we address that?
Well, number one is you ban VC and PE. You have to ban private equity and venture capital from buying single family homes. And that is a policy stance I've taken since the beginning of this. So that's first and foremost. But the second thing you have to do is you have to go after the driver behind that. And that is the short-term rental companies. Airbnb, Vrbo, everybody else who's in on it, right? Listen, I love to rent an Airbnb when I go to West Virginia. But y'all, I don't need to rent an Airbnb necessarily if I'm coming to Lexington. Like, we need to make sure that we hold the drivers to task, right? And they say, oh, we're just a platform. And I'm like, so is Facebook. And Facebook essentially caused a significant humanitarian and political crisis in Myanmar because of the platform. You're not just a platform. You are the conductive material to making that happen. And so it's going after those companies and making sure that their inventory, for example, is they don't allow, like there needs to be caps on their inventory, right? Like you can only onboard people onto the platform who own 10 or fewer properties, right? Or like, and if they do own more properties, they need to pay a higher rate. And there also need to be limitations, especially within gentrified areas, right? Because especially this is hurting Black and brown communities as well as poor white communities and poor immigrant communities. Because they'll go to these areas and they'll just pick up all those houses and be like, this is it now. When I lived in DC, actually, the guy who did the development, he owned two of the properties in the middle. And he rented them Airbnb all the time. The number of parties we had to deal with was insane. And I was like, dude, we purchased this property and you are taking like a third of this development and making it so you can just enrich yourself. We were in a housing crisis and you're doing this. So yeah, so it's really both, right? So it's controlling who can buy, and then it's really controlling the push for it too. Also, the third thing on that is I would put policy out there to increase interest rates and require higher tax levels, higher property tax levels for short-term rental properties. Anything else? Nope.
So how do we go about repairing the soft power?
Yeah, well, I think number
Disaster.
one, so I'm fascinated with the model of South Africa after apartheid. Part of the soft power piece has to be addressed internally. Because one of the things I think that the world needs to see and trust is that we're doing the work to get our own house in order. And so in South Africa after apartheid, after they had dumped, if you haven't read or listened to, I highly recommend listening to the audiobook of Trevor Noah's autobiography, Born a Crime. You will learn everything you need to know about apartheid and the realities of apartheid and why the concept of truth and reconciliation committees was necessary. Now the goal of truth and reconciliation committees was because they were like, listen, we just ended apartheid. Our culture is pretty broken. Our country has such a significant fractious nature right now because we have broken people up into shades of color and shades of class. And that dictated their ability to do things. But people were also lied to. You never really knew what the truth was coming from the government. So what we need now is that truth and reconciliation process. Joe Biden did win the 2020 election. No, Georgia did not steal any votes. Obama was born in Hawaii. There's all of these things that there are just, and you all see the lies, like every single day. It's just like a nonstop spigot. I just ignore it anymore, but I know a lot of people don't. And we have to address that truth and put that truth out there, but we also have to figure out how we are going to reconcile as a nation and how we move forward. After the Holocaust, Germany recreated their constitution. And if you haven't read the German constitution, I also highly recommend doing that. It essentially says, no human is a crime, and humanity is non-negotiable. But it took the Holocaust for them to get there. We can learn from that. We can learn from Rwanda. We can learn from South Africa. And we can learn from things that are happening here on the way that we need to move forward in a meaningful way. But then it's recommitting to those international institutions, which are so vital. Rejoining the World Health Organization. Putting stock back into our foreign service. Ramping up our foreign service. Investing in public diplomacy, as well as, political, economic, all the traditional. And then also putting a full stop pause on any new Department of Defense spending until they pass an audit. And then also finally, when it comes to defense piece, which also goes towards soft power though, is being committed to entering into a new START treaty, which is the strategic arms limitation treaties. Yes.
I appreciate the things you said, and I've spoken with you several times.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've looked at your things, and I know you're qualified for a lot of the things that you've mentioned here tonight.
Mhm.
My question is, in the more rural
Yeah.
pieces of the 6th district, I think they might have some different questions.
Oh,
how,
totally.
how are you going to make my life different and or better? What can we do? You know, what can you do for me as
Yeah.
a farmer or an entrepreneur in a mountain, or I'm somewhere where there's lack of transportation, which
Yep.
is a really big problem in a lot of the states.
Yes.
So I appreciate your speaking to us as this audience.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of
Yep.
what kind of things would you talk to about with people in more rural areas?
Oh yeah, like unless somebody really, if somebody in Powell County wants to talk to me about, you know, the strategic arms limitation treaties, like, let's roll. But I actually have been very well received in a lot of the rural areas. I did grow up in rural Anderson County. You know, my family is from Hazard, Kentucky. And you know, I've done a lot of work in southern Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Like, so I know those populations really well.
I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
responsiveness
Yeah.
to them, you would have to
Oh yeah.
do some finessing with because this is an intellectual conversation.
Oh yeah, but this is
And
also
I'm not
an
saying
intellectual
people in
crowd.
the other part of the
Yes.
state is not. It's
Yes.
just that for you to be successful, you've got to find a way
Yeah.
to do all those things.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you had a plan for that.
Oh yeah, listen, I go out to all those communities all the time already, right? And when I talk to those communities, I talk about the affordability, access, and opportunity, which is, again, that's the foundation of my campaign. It's making things more affordable, from your health care to groceries, increasing the federal minimum wage.
And I think that's what that group, we all want to hear, but I think specifically.
Yeah, yeah. So it's increasing the federal minimum wage, number one, right? That will bring wages up. Putting taxes on companies to make sure that we can pay for things like better health care, investing in rural health care. Because again, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you can access it, right? So it's investing in those clinics, making sure that Title I schools are invested in. I went and had conversations at Bowen Elementary in Stanton, Kentucky. I went and talked to like half the faculty. And that's a heavy federally funded school, but it's also one of the tightest knit school communities. Everyone there looks at their children like they're their own kids. With the lunch ladies, we're so proud of everything they were doing. I was back in the kitchen with them. And what I talked about was like, what help do you need? And they're like, we just need to live a fair life. And so it's bringing in companies that will bring jobs. I've done economic development. I've pulled in investments before, and I want to incentivize people to come to Powell County, to Anderson County, to give you not just a job, but a good job that allows you to thrive. But also to make sure that we are paying teachers more. I'm the product of public education. And just because there is no reason we should continually be at the bottom of every single list for all of the economic indicators, from starting teacher pay to support staff pay, to economic outcomes, to healthcare outcomes. So all of those things are important. And when it comes to universal healthcare, people say, well, how are you gonna do that? And I'm like, well, I have the beginning. You have to start somewhere. And the way that you start that is by providing primary and preventative care for free first. That leads to the best outcomes. So building a clinic in Slade, building a clinic in Flemingsburg, building clinics in Clay City to make sure that you don't have to drive to Lexington to get to see your doctor, and you're not putting it off. Maybe you have some pre-diabetes indicators. You go to that doctor, and that's preventative medicine that is provided to you free of cost. paid for by making sure that billionaires and companies are actually paying their fair share. Because the one thing that keeps happening over and over again right now is that we are in the situation we are in is because regular people, especially those at the bottom who are the lowest earners, are taking the last dollar from them and putting it into somebody's pocket who doesn't need it. So it's increasing taxes on the wealthy to pay for programs, to actually provide those vital services like healthcare, like free preventative and primary care to rural populations, to eliminating the tariffs that made these, all of these, the corn, the soybean farmers, you name it, them not be able to do things. But it's not just the farmers who are experiencing those issues. It's also the mechanic who is fixing that farmer's tractor. Can't get that part from Japan for his Kubota. Can't get that part from Mexico. So it's, and the other thing is too, is investing in local, like grocery stores too. I was in Estill County and I was talking with the mayor, and I was actually talking to the head of the operators union there too, and he was saying, Erin, we used to have 3 grocery stores in town, in Irvin. They're all gone. We now have to drive to Richmond for a Kroger. So it's addressing, so when it comes to public health, putting somebody in charge of our public health who knows what the heck they're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That was two, yeah. It's like bear meat's not gonna cure us. And it's making sure that we build things like grocery stores in these communities, that we fix food deserts, because food deserts don't just impact people in urban areas like Anacostia and DC. They impact people in Irvin, Kentucky. And those are the kind of things that I would pay for by taxing the people who actually need to pay their share. So there are those specific kind of things, such as bringing in good jobs, providing preventative and primary health care for free, and also the prescription drugs that are most common, statins, insulin, that kind of thing. And then also making sure that our teachers are taken care of, because in most of these communities, the public school system is the #1 employer. And then it's solving those problems that we don't think about and we take for granted every day, which is like bringing in those corner stores, bringing in those grocery stores. And maybe the solution is building a big grant program for small businesses to actually be able to compete as buyers against your Kroger or your Publix, so they can stock those stores. So,
Thank you, Erin.
and I'll be around.